Yeah, just simple and quick here. I just wanted to thank everyone for participating. This is kind of a long time running as far as organization, and so we're glad we're able to finally make it happen for everybody. And I hope they really enjoy the meals. And at the end or sometime this week or whenever, if you want to throw me some feedback, that's great. As far as whether we, obviously to let us know how Danny does, but I'm not really so much worried about him. More as like if people are interested in doing this again or trying some other combination of dish for the paella, whatever you guys are into, let me know and we can go from there. But that's pretty much all I got. So, why don't you guys take it away?
Great. Just a quick housekeeping. My name is Sherry Cottom. I'll be moderating the Zoom tonight. You all do have the ability to unmute yourselves and ask questions, so please feel free. It's a fairly large group at 40, so we'll try to keep it at a reasonable level. I'm also going to be in the chat room mirroring all of Chef's critical instructions. So if you missed something or want some clarification, you can always check the chat room as well. With that, thank you very much for joining us. And here's Chef Danny Lotto.
Hi, everybody. My name is Danny Yeva. I'm a chef and owner here at Chiquette Restaurant, as well as Plate Wine Bars on the first floor. We're going to be cooking tonight from our wood-fired kitchen here, which actually takes a look at our dining room. So for those of you that live in the DC area or plan to visit the DC area, feel free to come in, make a reservation, enjoy the luxury experience of watching us here cook paella. And without further ado, we're going to get started on this chicken and vegetable paella. This paella per se is, I think, one of the fundamental paellas amongst all the paellas out there, because this is more about what paella is about in terms of like the first forms of how paella came to be. Paella was originally a vegetarian dish. It was a poor purpose dish in terms of like people that worked the fields and stuff like that, and then they started adding chicken, and depending where you're from, they added seafood and stuff like that. So the first paellas were vegetarian as well as chicken and vegetable. So this basically brings us back to the basics, and it's a great paella with ingredients that you can actually do at home, with, purchasing from a grocery store. So here we have a paella pan, and here we have the ingredients. We have chicken, olive oil, salt, red pepper, cauliflower, green beans, tomato, garlic, saffron, and rice. And here we have chicken stock. Okay, so I'm doing a paella for one. I'm going to go over the portions in terms of this paella for one, and you can multiply it, based on the number of people you're cooking with at home. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring to about medium heat your gas stove or electric stove at home. If you have an electric stove, you're going to be actually closer to the way I'm cooking, because it takes a little bit of a delay in terms of like how the fire works. So keep that in mind. For those of you who have gas, feel lucky that you're able to do things at a quicker time period. So the first thing we do is bring this fire to about 50 to 70%. Put the pan directly on top like this, and wait about like 10 seconds. Put olive oil. Use 500 milliliters per serving. We have salt around the edges so it doesn't burn the edges here. And then just a little salt around the edges. We have the chicken. Well, I usually do about 5 ounces per serving of dark chicken. So chicken thigh, chicken leg, and chop it up because it brings more flavor. The chicken itself doesn't get dry. And we just start moving it around. We're browning it. We season to taste. And we add a little bit more chicken, maybe a little bit more salt. And we have here. So what we want to be doing is browning the chicken. Okay. And that's how we got started. So again, recapping the first couple steps here, we are bringing the fire to 50 to 70%. We are browning the chicken with 25 milliliters of olive oil, little salt. We'll season it, the chicken and the pan on it, and we start cooking. We start browning this chicken. Here, we continue browning the chicken.
Maybe you can turn it so that you can feel it, not reach over it. Maybe you can feel. Don't get oil in it.
All right, as we go ahead and keep browning this, we add the next step. We add some red peppers. How about half a pepper per person? And dice it up like this. And a little bit of cauliflower. I cut it up like this into little trees. And we're gonna saute these two ingredients. And now we're gonna cook these vegetables specifically to about 50%. So as soon as we start seeing this turn a little brown, that's when we remove it and we add it to a second plate.
I did, yeah.
Okay. So the lima beans, we keep them in there. So to remove the red peppers, that's the only one we removed now. Make sure you keep this at no longer than 50% in terms of high heat. And now we add the green beans to it. And this, we also saute slightly. So we leave the two beans there, the lima beans and these green beans. We season this a little bit, these beans, bring a little bit more flavor into the green beans, which gives a little bit more flavor into the stock. And then we add the sofrito. The sofrito in Valencia is different than sofrito in other parts of Spain and other parts of Latin America. Sofrito is the combination of garlic, tomato, and sweet paprika. Okay? This combination classifies as sofrito. So we use about a tablespoon per person, and about a clove of garlic bread, and about a half a tablespoon of sweet paprika. And we mix that in with all the ingredients here. And now we just added the sofrito. And after we add and cook down the sofrito, then we add the broth. I'm using about a cup and a half, 2 cups of chicken stock because I have here 100 grams, half a cup of rice. Okay. And now, so far, I still have salt here. I still have rice, and I'm about to put in. As soon as I put in the broth, I add a little pinch, about a quarter of a gram of saffron, and I mix it all in together. And now I bring this to high heat, the highest heat. So as a recap, I cooked the chicken first, brown it, the chicken, then I added the red peppers. I know you guys have beans in the home, so green beans and lima beans. We added to it. We cooked that down a little bit. We added then the sofrito, the tomato, garlic, and sweet paprika. We added, cooked that down. We added the stock. We added about 1/4 gram per person in terms of saffron. And now we just have these ingredients here. Salt, just because we're gonna taste salt in a very specific moment. The red peppers were removed. And we left the beans inside. So now we're bringing this to high heat. We wanted this to go to rapid boil. And as soon as it goes to rapid boil, essentially we are gonna add the rice, and it's an 18-minute cooking process. 10 minutes on high heat, 8 minutes on a simmer. On the last minute to half a minute, we're gonna increase the heat to create a little bit of that caramelization on the bottom of the paella pan, the succarot. So as you see here, I'm bringing it to high heat. Make sure all the ingredients are being mixed in well together. And I'm gonna add here the rice. Spread it out like rain. So make sure it's all spread out, all on the bottom. Pretend like the rice is a thin layer of sand on the bottom of the ocean. And I have here cooking. So about a minute in of cooking this, that's when we do the salt test. It should taste slightly like slightly salted chicken broth, okay? Like your good grandma's chicken soup or matzo ball soup. You know, just slightly salty. Why slightly salty? Because the rice is going to absorb the salt and create a perfectly seasoned rice. So that's a key aspect. So I recommend that you guys taste right now and make sure that it's slightly outside of your comfort level, not too much in terms of salt. So now it's a salt test and where you make sure. I already know from memory, based on how much salt I already put in, that I'm good on my end. So, but I would check at home at this moment. So I have here, again, 1 minute, 18 minutes on high heat, and 8 minutes on a simmer. And the last 8 minutes, I'm gonna bring it up to temperature to create the caramelization on the bottom. So as you see here, I'm not stirring. All I'm doing is making sure that everything is like just a nice cape of sand on the bottom of the paella. That's what I'm looking for. So here we go, cooking on high heat. Now, around this time, I'm going to start making some, I talk about a little bit about beverage accompaniments when it comes down to this. I recommend, anything you like in general. When it comes to, I always believe that you eat and drink what you like. The natural accompaniments to this type of paella is like a Tempranillo, Pinot Noir, something nice so that it's not too overpowering. And also beer and, sparkling. In Spain, we drink a lot of cava. Cava is great to go accompanied to go with a paella. If you were to use a white wine, I recommend a Chardonnay, something with a little bit more body to it. Since you guys are having, the beans instead of the cauliflower that I thought you guys had today, so I want to make sure I have the beans here with you. And once you start seeing the rice like this, that's where, you have to remember when I cook here in front of a wood fire, it's always going to be a little bit faster because I can by default, can bring the heat up very high. So right now, when you start seeing the simmer, and start seeing the rice, so right now to get a little lower, I'm gonna bring down the temperature a little bit to get that just more of a simmer on my end. So I'm already at what would be the equivalent of like minutes 12 to 14, and where I start to add back the red pepper into it. I spread it around. You know, the reason why you want to be symmetrical, especially with those of you cooking at home for, 4 people, and in Valencia, when you eat in a family, you eat from a paella pan, with small plates on the side, basically to to put the bones of the chicken or for it. That's really, but you're all eating from the paella pan. So you want a paella that's symmetrical. So each person that's eating from the pan has their own portion that's equal to everybody else. So you don't want all the chicken on one side, all the peppers on the other. You want a balance. So besides aesthetic appeal, it has a functional, aspect of making sure everybody eats the paella, and it has the same access to the same ingredients. So right here, I'm focusing on a little bit of a simmer. And, I'm letting this simmer over the next several minutes.
Yeah. Well, he added because he mixed up the ingredient. He might have added that too.
Okay. All right, I want to do a recap for those of you who might be a little bit behind on whatever steps you could be at. I want to say from in the beginning process, we started off with sauteing the chicken with 25 milliliters of olive oil with a little bit of salt. And then we sauteed the vegetables, the red peppers, and then we removed them. We added the lima beans and the green beans, and we sauteed them. Then we added the sofrito. The sofrito aspect was the tomato, garlic, and the sweet paprika. We cooked that down with the chicken and the vegetables. Remember, we still had the red peppers separate. After that, we added a chicken stock. After adding the chicken stock, we added saffron. We brought that to a boil. Once we brought it to the boil, we added the rice. 1 minute added the rice on a high heat. Then we made a taste test to make sure that we had the right level of salt, slightly salted, because by the time we eat the rice, it needs to, the rice penetrates the salt, absorbs the salt, get you to a perfectly seasoned rice. So 10 minutes high heat, 8 minutes medium. The last minute to 30 seconds, we bring it up for to create the caramelization on the bottom. Here, it's still, so interesting enough, here is a good position. I still have about a minute or so when it's, even though it looks dry, you still see bubbles, and that's, liquid still being absorbed. So it's still about a minute away. You can bring it up to, this is like my equivalent of minute 16 to minute 17. We bring this to high heat to create that caramelization on the bottom. So I'm gonna bring back some of this wood here, create a little bit of a sense of urgency to get that caramelization that happens on the bottom.
I accidentally took my lima beans out with the peppers. Is that all right?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
I took my lima beans out with the red pepper. So is it all right to put it back, the lima beans and red pepper?
Put them back in?
Okay.
So you guys put in the lima beans around the same time as I did. So here we have it's all being dried up nicely. I'm creating a little bit of a higher heat here for myself. So have here, I'm going to bring it a little bit more. So kids, don't try this at home. I'm going to create a little bit more other caramelization here. Getting it closer. And here we go. So here we have our chicken and vegetable paella with caramelization with sauerkraut. And at this moment, I can open it up for some questions, comments. Some questions that I always get around this time is what happens if the broth goes away too quickly or not fast enough. You can control the temperature. So if your broth goes away too quickly, bring it to low heat to make sure that the rice gets cooked fully. The way to test the rice out is like you take a spoon and get a grain of rice. If it has more than a hairline fracture of whiteness inside of the grain, it needs to be cooked a little further. We want a al dente rice at the end of the day. So the hairline fracture is the definition of an al dente rice grain. Shrimp, I recommend taking my seafood class. Also, it really depends on how your shrimp is prepared. If it's already peeled, then I would just add it at the end, 1 minute each side. The steam by itself cooks the shrimp. If you have it with the skin on, the shell on the shrimp, then I would do it and treat it like the red peppers, which I would saute it at 50%, remove them, and add it at the last minute. And the reason that we do, with this type of paella in terms of shrimp, the rice is a protagonist here for us Valencians when it comes down to paella. So the rice represents the ingredients. So, when we do this represents, the stock represents, the chicken and the vegetable. And so if you were to do, seafood, it wouldn't necessarily end chicken. The rice would be to mix in terms of flavors to not have, homogeneity and the authenticity of a paella, which is the rice being the protagonist and representing the other ingredients of the paella.
Hey, Danny, question for you.
Yes.
How old were you when you cooked your first paella?
How old was I?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been cooking. My dad was a paella chef, so I've been cooking by his side as long as I can remember from as a kid. So paella has definitely been part of my life for a long time. And, not just for my dad, but my family. Every aunt had a different type of paella that they were good at, and we always ate whenever we went to their house, besides my professional career.
Had another question asking about cleaning suggestions.
Cleaning suggestions for the pan. So for these type of pans, besides cleaning them, well, you gotta make sure once you dry it, you have to dry it completely. And then you add a coat of any type of oil, vegetable, or olive to make sure it doesn't oxidize. So if you have the traditional steel pan, after cleaning it and drying it, you immediately need to apply a light coat of olive oil or vegetable oil.
Okay, 7 minutes and counting.
About what type of tomato they use.
I just use a normal Roma tomato or a big large tomato and make sure I parade it. So nothing necessarily special in terms of the type of tomato we use, just to make sure that it's pureed.
Hey, Chef, I had a question for you. I thought it was interesting you didn't have onion in your sofrito.
Oh, that's a very great question. So being a Valencian paella or using rice, onion is an enemy because it adds more water, more H2O, and would soften the rice too much. So on paellas in general, we do not use onion. And for the fideuá paella, the one that we use noodle, that is one that we can use onion to soften up the noodle quickly, since it's a different type of paella. Your question is really valid because in some parts of Spain and Latin America, they do use onion for what they classify as sofrito. So great question.
When we put the peppers back in, are we stirring everything up or?
No, as you see, I just placed it. So no stirring. All I was making sure in terms of the rice that I was creating a nice layer of sand on the bottom of the ocean. That's all I cared about in terms of placement. And then I added the peppers being 50%, cooked, add them there to soften. Because at the end of the day, the peppers and the other vegetables, I want texture within the vegetable. I don't want to it to be converted to like a soup and where it's not. So if I let the peppers in there, it doesn't have the stamina like the green bean in order to withhold the cooking process. So that's why we remove it, and we want to make sure that it has the texture, have a bite to it. Unless you don't have teeth, it's a good idea.
Hey, Chef, so what other kinds of paellas do you make at Zuquet?
Right now, we have 3 paellas on our a la carte menu. We have a vegetarian. We have a premium seafood paella, which is or duquesa de Denia, and we have a hunter's paella, which is one of my creative paellas. So, this one is done with some confit, foie gras, asparagus, lima bean, and I also add black truffles on it as well. We also have different types of paella for our rice dishes for our tasting menu. Right now, we're offering a rabbit and snail escargot type of rice dish paella on our tasting menu at this moment. So we change the tasting menu pretty often. We change our menu monthly. So if you look at our website, chiquetdl.com, it shows the a la carte menu as well as the tasting menu, as well as like the restaurant week menu that's available right now to go, and our Valentine's menu for the whole weekend. So you can definitely see what type of paellas we have, and welcome everybody to come through and make a reservation with us.
Okay. So I know a number of minutes ago in the chat, everybody was indicating that they still had quite a lot of broth because you were cooking multiple portions. Is that starting to come together for everybody? Is it looking good? Thumbs up?
Still a lot of broth on our end.
I know ours does cook very fast with the heat of that wood burning fire. And it's not necessarily replicable at home.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would say one thing I've noticed after doing so many of these with Chef Danny now is he's much faster in his kitchen than my kitchen. So there's nothing wrong with that.
I hope you guys, like, I do understand that aspect. Kyle brings up that point, as I do notice that I am quicker on that. So that's why I try to do the recaps throughout the process to make sure that those, because it's not just my kitchen or me. It's also the stove that you have at home or electrical, the size of the paella you have. These are factors. Like this paella for one, if I made it for 4 with that same pan, it would take longer. And that's just the reality of it. In a perfect world, this is a paella for one. A paella for two would be a bigger paella pan. A paella for, for 8 people would constitute almost like a, like 3 foot to 2 foot paella pan. Because for us, the thinness and creating a caramelization across the board, for this style of paella is what we're accustomed to from a modern paella perspective. And in an old-fashioned traditional paella perspective, they do have a more of like a rural area. You do see paellas that have like an inch to inch and a half of thickness. So, this paella, we're looking for thin maximization in flavor and thinness, but obviously at home, I recognize sometimes my own capabilities. If I have people over and if I didn't have my outdoor cooking equipment, if I just had the stove, then I would also have to, have the same constraints as you guys. I would have to make a thicker paella. So a paella pan, for argument's sake, is one that looks like this. It has 2 handles on each side. It's, it's flat, it's open. So that to me is a paella pan. How is this different from a saute pan? I mean, here, the reality is that when I cook in the broth, it doesn't overflow. So, I think that in itself, it's helpful. So I've made paella, not having a paella pan in a big pot, big pan. A pot, not necessarily, because then it would be too thick. If I'm gonna have just a normal pan, like I cook a fried egg on it, that would work as well. I've made paellas on smokers and stuff like that. It's just a matter of controlling the fire. I've been cooking with wood fire for probably the last 4 to 5 years in my professional career. And I have to say it's not something for the faint of heart. It takes patience, understanding the proper, cooking in paella is very different for me than cooking a steak or cooking, using a smoker. It's a different, you have to have a direct flame. So you have to understand that process. When you cook a steak, you want to cook it over coals. Well, that doesn't work. I don't have enough heat, when I cook a paella for that. So it's a process. It's something that me as a professional have really worked on over the past 5 years. If you feel like if you're a good grill cook, putting the paella test outside, it's going to take some time, to get that, technique, to make sure you have enough flame to saute chicken or vegetables or anything, or to boil, the stock in the paella pan. So those are all things to take into consideration. All right. Well, I think if that's it, I greatly appreciate you guys participating today. I look forward to more classes with you guys. Welcome you guys to come visit us here at the restaurant. It's a great experience. Kyle can share with some of his thoughts that he's been at Chiquette. He's also been at our sister restaurant, Slate Wine Bar. We have something here for everybody, especially it's restaurant week. So please come visit us here at Slate Wine Bar or Chiquette. And with that, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy your paella tonight.
Great. I'm starting to see in the chat room that people are ready to sit down and eat, so we won't keep you from your hot meals unless there are any final questions. Allow another minute. Otherwise, thank you all again for joining us. Enjoy. We look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, Chef.
Thanks.